My brother inquired whether my Bronze Star medal could buy him a Mustang. My mother nodded and said, "He's right." 20 years of duty, sacrifice, and honor turned to ash. They assumed she was lonely and broken. They had no idea they were watching a soldier training for her next war. Our family was the battlefield this time. Colonel Harper Quinn. First time in a year I was home from Syria, sitting across from my family. Chris's Steak and Seafood Restaurant in Fayetteville, North Carolina, smelled like grilled meat and tasted fake. It permeated the heavy red draperies and rich wood paneling, smothering pretension. My mother, Ella Laner Collins, a Southern woman whose self-worth was tied to her social status, was in court. Not with me, her daughter, who had just spent 365 days coordinating intel in one of the most hazardous planet. No, she was leaning toward the next table, boasting about her son, my younger brother, First Lieutenant Logan Quinn, with a honeyed draw. "My Logan is fantastic," she said to half the diner. "He just finished this advanced logistics course." I watched Logan 28 absorb this technique, which you'd think he planned for the 802nd Airborne. Taking a basic officer's course was mandatory but unimpressive military step. Under our mother's warm story, he was a blossoming General Patton. He took a long beer drink and grinned. My father, Walter, was the silent accomplice all his life. He focused on his medium-rare steak, maneuvering his knife and fork like a surgeon. It was his hallmark move. A retreat into the banal to avoid conflict. His silence wasn't peace, an endorsement. No one asked about Damascus sleepless evenings. People didn't ask about life or death decisions or the faces of young troops whose survival depended on my intelligence. I was a ghost at my welcome home party, a faded snapshot acting as a colorless contrast for my brother. A naive, stubborn hope remained. I tried to kill this disloyal emotion, decades. On the white tablecloth, I placed a dark blue velvet box from my luggage with one final hope. My mother's performance was halted by its gentle, decisive thud. The restaurant's low golden light illuminated the Bronze Star medal on satin. Stars glittering brilliance. Ribbons rich scarlet with vivid blue stripe. Courage, merit, and sacrifice were represented. My offering. Voice, I was granted this, stabler than I felt, yet a little tremor betrayed me. For leading my last intelligence patrol. Logan took it. He didn't respect it. He played with it like a cereal box toy, flipping it in his palm. That old contemptuous grin appeared on his lips. "Neat," he scoffed. He met my gaze with cold eyes like my mother's. "Does this buy a Mustang? Maybe it's a decoration for a lonely old woman." Fort Bragg temporary apartment? Not only did my heart fall, it stopped. Ice formed in my lungs. My mother's voice broke the hush before I could speak or defend my honor. Sweet, melodious, and brutal. "He's correct, Harper," she murmured, rubbing Logan's hand like he'd made a meaningful point. "Logan is practical. Guys need stuff, honey. Nice automobile, good career, something they can view and touch." Their two features showed nonchalant brutality as the globe shrank. When my humiliation was about to swallow me, a deep, authoritative voice spoke. Colonel Collins. Liam Hunter, Logan's commander, was standing by our table. He stood erect in his dress attire. He didn't look at Logan. The way he looked at me was a sign of deep respect, a lifeline in the sea. He said, "Congratulations on the medal, ma'am," clearly and loudly. "The entire base is talking about your work in Syria. It's an honor." He then looked at Logan and our mother. He expressed professional disdain instead of respect. Table temperature fell 10 degrees. Captain Thorne said, "Lieutenant Collins," in a formal tone. "Learn to respect a superior officer and the country's gallantry emblems." Ice formed in the atmosphere. My mother's charming, professional face stiffened. Logan's grin died, replaced with a wide-eyed, worried look. Their carefully built story may have been publicly destroyed by an unimpeachable authority for the first time. Captain Thorne turned and left after nodding to me. His stillness was thicker and more oppressive than the noise. My mom cleared her throat, a little frustrated sound and pivot. "Walter, did you hear about the new Greenway project?" I stopped listening. I observed them, these folks whose features were once my universe. For the first time, I saw them objectively like an intelligence analyst. Logan's contempt wasn't childish. Favoritism wasn't my mother's endorsement. It was a fundamental idea, a terrible truth. Their eyes saw my sacrifices. My discipline and accomplishments were useless compared to my brother's material needs. My bones felt the restaurant's air conditioning vent's coolness, which reminded me of another cold. A deeper, more familiar chill that has accompanied me forever. My restaurant chill wasn't caused by the air conditioning. It was historic. The feeling was familiar. It was chill. A ghost from the sultry summers pursued me. My childhood North Carolina autumns were crisp. In my isolated Fort Bragg temporary housing, the silence wasn't empty. Every moment I felt little, invisible, and insignificant was echoed in it. First Baptist Church's Christmas Eve cold smelled like candle wax and pine boughs. I was 15 and spent the week before the yearly potluck mastering my grandmother's pecan pie recipe. Her handwritten notes on the faded index guided me, card smeared with butter, and time to make a flaky crust and a gooey caramel filling. My golden pie beautifully displayed on the big fellowship hall table with green bean casseroles and honey-baked hams. Pastor Jonathan took a bite, his eyes expanding in excitement, and my heart raced. He shouted, "My goodness, this is heavenly!" booming off the lofty ceilings. What genius baker created this masterpiece? It boosted my pride and I moved ahead to seize my moment. Before I could speak, my mother wrapped her arm around Logan's shoulders. He was 9, more interested in sneaking another sugar cookie than in my culinary achievement. "That would be my Logan," she told the pastor, smiling falsely. "He's talented with his hands like his father." Logan shrugged and smiled, already eating my pie. And exactly like I was erased. I felt like a parody as a red Christmas sweater ghost stood there listening to "O Holy Night" from the choir practice room. The hard, real knot of hurt in my throat tasted worse than burnt coffee in the church percolator. That was my first realization that my accomplishments were not mine. They were communal resources my mother could give my brother. The cold resembled Hurricane Fran's 1996 violent rain. The North Carolina storm destroyed our historic oak tree from the front yard, leaving a gaping scar in the dirt. It was my first year at West Point. Then, surviving on a small cadet salary, I sent $500 home from my savings. My fortune came from spit-shine shoes and repeated exercises. My father, speaking with unusual affection over the phone, agreed to use some of it to lay a commemorative brick, reconstructed front walkway. He remarked, "Everyone knows the Collins family has 2 children serving this country." And my heart swelled with a sense of belonging and heritage. I returned home on leave that spring to find only one gold script line on the marble paver in the new concrete path, "Logan Quinn." I stared at it, my name missing, a tangible blow. My father noticed my face and shuffled awkwardly, avoiding my gaze. He stammered, "Harper," cleaning his spectacles. "Son names sound stronger and more lasting. He's responsible for the family name's future." He spoke as if it were a natural phenomenon like gravity or the rising sun. His world saw me as transient. Daughters serve, daughters leave, sons endure. The storm outside had subsided, but the one inside me was just starting to rage, a resentful storm that would last years. There was one bright spot among those gloomy memories, one bright spot in a cold shoulder landscape. My grandpa Jack, a Marine who survived the horrific UMA combat, witnessed things others missed. Only he saw me genuinely. Logan accidentally dismantled my science fair model volcano, so I was moaning on the back porch one calm summer afternoon. Granddad stood alongside me on the wooden steps, the air scented with chopped grass and Old Spice aftershave. He didn't abuse Logan or give bogus promises. He pointed a worn finger at the great blue Carolina sky. "Look up there, Harper," he grumbled. His comments became my anchor in the lonely barracks at West Point and on bleak forward operating locations, where I felt neglected or unimportant. Dismissed by my family, I would hold on to that phrase forged from starlight. It was a secret identity, a source of strength only I knew about. But my grandpa Jack was gone now, buried with full military honors years ago. It felt like that anchor had rusted away, leaving me adrift. So I returned to the present, to my Fort Bragg apartment, with the Bronze Star in my palm. For so many years, I had let Margot and Logan's clouds overshadow my light. I had fought enemies of the state, planned campaigns, and led soldiers on foreign battlefields, but I had consistently, unconditionally surrendered on the home front. I accepted my own insignificance without a fight. Surface. It dredged up every ghost, every slight, every erased accomplishment from the bottom of my soul. A bayonet-twisted question twisted in my gut. Where was the warrior my grandpa Jack saw in me? Where was the woman forged from starlight? What must I do to be worthy of that one piece of faith and to finally reclaim my own sky? That night, sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. My living room became a tactical operations center when I removed the large world map on my wall with pins from my deployments and mounted a large whiteboard with Operation Ledger written at the top in clean black letters. My military training kicked in, a familiar and comforting discipline. The goal was to collect, analyze, and verify all intelligence. Phase 1 was open source intelligence, OSINT. I started my laptop, logged into an anonymous VPN, and started working. I had developed skills to track terrorist cells and expose disinformation networks. My mother's Facebook profile was a goldmine of targeted misinformation, carefully curated tribute with hashtags like Stump Proud Army Mama Car Hero Son and Sug Future Leader. One photo showed him standing beside a battle tank with his arms crossed confidently. My mother's caption read, "My boy protecting our country." I knew tank was a static display at the Airborne and Special Operations Museum, and the photo was taken on his day off. I wasn't a hero. I was a burden to be prayed for. Then I found a GoFundMe page called a Logan Quinn Consulting. The goal was $50,000, and the banner image was a photo of me shaking hands with a 4-star general at a promotion ceremony. My reputation and years of service were being used to lend credibility to his scam. The description was even gorier: way for Logan to help secure the family's future. He was painting himself as the savior bolstered by my military image. The next step was to follow the money. My security clearance simplified access to certain public and financial records. But the real key was the joint savings account I had been diligently contributing to for 20 years. I had always seen it as a family safety net. The $20,000 combat pay bonus I'd received after a particularly difficult mission in Iraq had vanished, siphoned off in a series of cash withdrawals just under the $10,000 reporting threshold. Dozens of small bites designed to go unnoticed. And then the final damning proof of his lifestyle. A public record search. Agreements led me to a lease contract for a penthouse apartment in North Hills, one of Raleigh's most expensive neighborhoods, for $100 a month. Logan, the brother who was always short on cash and needed help with his car payment, was living a life of luxury funded entirely by my service and sacrifice. With technology, I ran a keyword search, Harper's Money. The results loaded instantly. Dozens of emails. My eyes landed on one sent from my mother to Logan, dated 3 years prior. The subject line made my blood run cold. Regarding your sister's bonus. Clicked it open. The text was short and brutally efficient. Harper just called. That was it. The linchpin. The confirmation of intent. This wasn't recklessness. It was a calculated long-term conspiracy built on my trust. I printed everything. Page after page spilled from my printer, the bank statements with fraudulent withdrawals highlighted in digital red, the timestamp screenshots of the Facebook posts, and the GoFundMe page, the rental, hills, and finally the email. My fingers didn't tremble as I organized the documents. They were steady. I slid the stack of papers into a clear protector and started creating an encrypted file on a secure thumb drive. I needed evidence. Now I had an arsenal. After nights spent in spreadsheets and bank statements, my mind was stretched taut like a wire about to snap, by a cold fury that was exhausting me. Just as I felt myself about to drown in the sea of cold, hard data, my phone rang. The caller ID read, General James Miller. My mentor, who had guided me since I was a bewildered second lieutenant. When I answered, his voice was a deep, warm baritone, a stark contrast to the brittle tension in my own home. That's an order, Colonel. For the first time in days, a genuine warmth pierced my icy armor around my heart. It was a simple invitation, but it felt like a rescue. I had forgotten what it felt like to be wanted, to be truly cared for. Driving to the Millers' home near Southern Pines on Sunday, I felt the knot in my shoulders relax. Veiled insults, no passive-aggressive silences. Helen, the general's wife, hugged me like coming home and held on for a moment as if she knew I needed it. Their children and grandchildren, many of whom were also in the military, greeted me with handshakes and respect. They saw a colonel, not a lonely old maid, understanding of fellow soldiers. Your work over there saved a lot of our people, Harper. We read the reports, General Miller said, his voice full of pride that my father had never been able to muster. He placed a heavy hand on my shoulder, and the simple affirming gesture almost brought me to tears. We ate platters of crispy fried chicken, creamy mashed potatoes, and savory collard greens at a large wooden table. The general and I sat on the back porch, looking out over a meticulously cared for garden of roses and hydrangeas. As the sun set, the air was cool and smelled of damp earth. "Something's weighing on you, Ma." Not looking at me but at the horizon. "You look like a soldier who's just come through a battle, but I don't think it was the one in Syria." My first instinct was to lie, to put on Colonel Collins' stoic, unbreakable mask. "I'm fine, sir, just readjusting." But as I looked at his kind, knowing eyes, my carefully constructed walls began to crumble. I whispered, "Sometimes, sir, the hardest battles are the ones fought on the home front." He nodded and placed his hand on my shoulder again. "Just remember, Harper, you're not alone in this fight. Call me if you need reinforcements." Driving back to Fort Bragg, I felt at peace. The Miller family's kindness was a balm on a raw wound, a temporary anesthetic. Buzzed on the passenger seat, shattering the calm. The screen shone with the dreaded word, "Mom." I took a deep breath before answering, bracing myself for impact. Her voice was syrupy sweet, a tone I had learned to associate with a request. "Harper, darling," she began, "I have a little favor to ask. Your brother has a great business mind, but he needs some funds to start. I created that GoFundMe page and I was thinking, could you tell your high-ranking friends? You could affect Logan's future with one click." The warmth from my Miller's evening vanished as my mother's syrupy voice came over the phone. A well-planned, multi-pronged attack on my determination. Her call was the first shot. I held my phone, its cool plastic contrasting with my hot heat. "Not a good idea, Mom." "Concept," I said dangerously calmly. I used all my military discipline to keep it level. Using my rank and my ties for personal gain violates the uniform code of military justice. Not ethical. A contemptuous, high-pitched laugh came from the other end. Someone who views rules as suggestions laughed. "Stop being rigid, Harper. For family. No huge deal. A few introductions. Imagine mentioning Logan's project, Miller General. He'd help immediately. You're a colonel. Use your power for good." Bitter nausea hit me. The useful thing was her son's scam. They wanted more than money. My soul was sought. They asked me to risk my job, flawless record, and honor on a falsehood. She requested more than a favor. She wanted me as her accomplice. 2 days later, next wave of assault appeared at my door. Logan seemed lost like a puppy. A carefully produced look of sad dejection replaced the normal arrogance. Slumped shoulders, lone look. His voice was quiet and wounded as he said, "Harper, even though you're upset at me, I'm trying. My business proposal is amazing, but nobody will consider it." He pleaded with big eyes at me. "Mom's correct. A word from you might change everything. I can only get help from you. Do you want your brother to fail?" He performed his childhood trick, puppy dog eyes transparently this time. I saw no misunderstood youth. I saw through cheap theater. Lazy grifter tried to use my life's labor to make his own easy, unearned route. I glimpsed his inner decay. That night, the final onslaught was over the phone. My dad called. He spoke with a fake tiredness and resentment. He remarked, "Harper, your mother has been crying all day," seeming disappointed. "Do you realize how much you wounded her? Your brother Logan. Family should help family." His sigh was lengthy and powerful. "Though I've worked hard my whole life, I lack your connections. You can inspire this family. Why are you selfish?" Also there, it was. For the first time, his silence was used against him. The man who had never supported me and ignored my successes was now guilt-tripping me into joining in their lie. His silence was never neutral. It was just waiting for the proper time to serve their purpose. Breakpoint arrived that weekend. Annual Heroes Homecoming Week at Fayetteville. A citywide veteran and active duty soldier celebration. The city center, the neighborhood was full of families, flags, and communal pride. People like myself revered it. Yet my mother regarded it as a stage. She saw my father's Rotary Club friends, local business owners, near the main stage. She pulled me over with a firm grip, making my uniform feel more like a costume in her play than a mark of pride. Her smile was big as she said, "Gentlemen, please meet Colonel Harper, my daughter, Collins." For emphasis, she paused to show my rank. She turned smoothly before I could say hello. She is proud and fully supportive of her brother Logan's new business. With theatrical flair, she pulled a stack of Logan Quinn consulting business cards from her purse and distributed them like a seasoned saleswoman. I was transfixed as a silent uniformed mannequin, a living endorsement for "they lied." I was presented as a symbol, but the truth was hidden behind appearances. I was utilized to deceive under a banner that read, "Thank you for your service." My blood started burning. Casual harshness at the steakhouse hurt privately. My character was publicly executed. I eventually lost my composure after a lifetime of swallowing insults. Silence was no longer effective. Being silent was complicit. I remembered General Miller's words. "You're fighting with others." He was right, but he couldn't defend me. I needed self-reinforcement. I felt a cold, harsh clarity through the noise and shame. In the boisterous square, I silently vowed, "What is the truth? And who gets to tell it?" A stranger's cheap, glossy business card and my mother's delighted smile told me the answer. Me. I felt dreadful after the hero's homecoming humiliation. I had one last terrible suspicion to confirm. My financial assessment left a $2,000 transfer from months ago unaccounted for. I called my Aunt Linda in Asheville, my mother's younger sister, with a deep breath. I gently guided the topic after a few minutes of niceties about her garden and the weather, sounding casually concerned. "Aunt," I asked Carol, "how are your eyes? Did the cataract surgery a few months ago go well?" I received a perplexed quiet from the other end. It was a few seconds of confusion. "Surgery, honey? What surgery?" she asked with genuine confusion. "Margot, your mother, told me you were having financial problems and couldn't transfer the money yet. She told me to stop bothering you. Said you were overloaded." My poor thing, I felt horrible. "For you." It seemed like a vice was holding my heart. A sudden pained gasp hit my chest. She never received the $2,000 I sent from my hazardous duty to pay for her operation. They stopped it. They stole from family. It wasn't the ultimate blow. My lungs were wiped out by the final blow, wrapped in misguided thanks. But thank goodness for that wonderful boy. "Logan," she said, beaming, "is the kindest. He loaned me $500 the moment I told him I couldn't afford the initial consultation. He said once his new company takes off, he'll cover the whole procedure for me." I had to grab the edge of my kitchen counter to keep from collapsing. The room tilted. The calculated depravity was breathtaking. Lie about my financial failure to cover their tracks. Then they used a fraction of my money to rebrand Logan as a benevolent, self-made savior and used my compassion to defraud their own family, an elderly woman in need of medical care. This wasn't dysfunctional family behavior. They were relentless in taking advantage of trust, even within family. The rage that had been simmering for weeks had finally boiled over, scorching away every last trace of sadness. It was a clean, pure, righteous fury. I had dedicated my entire adult life to defending this country from foreign enemies. But I now realized that the most dangerous enemy I had ever faced shared my last name. They lived in the house where I grew up, surrounded by the ghosts of my childhood memory. Me from the Bible, and a verse she loved came to mind. Jeremiah 29 verse 11. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future." Sitting there in the dark, I reinterpreted it through the lens of a soldier, a strategist. God's plan wasn't for me to silently endure harm. I whispered into the darkness, a solemn vow that sealed the death of the person I used to be. The game ends now. Have you ever been pushed so far that the only way forward is to fight back with everything you have? I woke up the next morning before the sun rose over the horizon. I took out a yellow legal pad and a pen and began to outline the phases of engagement, handwriting a steady, determined script. Phase 1: consolidate and systemize all evidence into an undeniable dossier. Every bank statement, every email, every screenshot, a fortress of facts. Phase 2: neutralize primary threats. Phase 3: establish the surrender terms. This was no longer a family squabble to be resolved over Sunday dinner. This was a reckoning, and I planned my response with precision and resolve. The next morning, I drove to the FedEx office on Skibbo Road. The sun was just a pale disk in the hazy carol. I was an intelligence officer compiling a case file, and this sterile, brightly lit copy shop was my armory. I started printing from an encrypted USB drive, which held the digital ghosts of their betrayal. Page after page slid into the tray with a soft, each one a testament to their long and meticulous campaign of deceit. The timestamp screenshots of my mother's saccharine Facebook propaganda and Logan's phony self-aggrandizing GoFundMe page. The damning chain of emails between my mother and my brother. Their conspiracy laid bare in cold black text. The penthouse apartment lease from Raleigh, a monument to their audacity, 127 pages. The warm stack of papers was taken to a large worked in the corner. The crisp percussive snap of the 3-hole punch was a satisfying mechanical sound, a counterpoint to the emotional chaos of the past few days. I arranged the documents chronologically, methodically into a heavy-duty black binder. Back in my apartment, I opened the Excel spreadsheet for the final time. My finger hovered over the mouse. I clicked the box for the grand total. The number that appeared on the screen, stark against the white background, calmed my nerves, even though I knew what it would be. 87 Southern 150 RS. The figure had a weight and gravity that transcended currency. It was the price of my trust, my naivete, and it had a legal name, grand larceny, a felony. Using a label maker, I printed a clean professional title for the spine of the black binder. Truth. I taped another clean sheet of paper to my whiteboard, where my mission outline still lingered. The new title was Rules of Engagement, written in bold block letters. I knew I couldn't fight them on their terms. My mother was a master tactician, skilled in guilt, tears, and redirection, precision of a mission planner. 1 verbal acknowledgement from them for each specific fraudulent act. No blanket apologies. 2. A legally binding repayment plan drafted by a lawyer. 3. Public and private restitution starting with a full honest apology to Aunt Linda. 4. Professional consequences for Logan to be handled by his command. And the unpredictable. I gamed out their reactions, their every likely move. My mother's theatrical tears, Logan's explosive, self-righteous anger, and my father's guilty, deafening silence. For each predictable tactic, I had a counter-move. I would not be ambushed or outmaneuvered. The final step in my preparation was to secure a witness, an objective observer. I picked up the phone and called Liam Hunter. My voice was all business, without any personal emotion. It was the voice of a superior officer addressing a subordinate, leaving no room for negotiation. Captain Thorne, this is Colonel Collins. I'm convening a formal family meeting tomorrow evening to address some serious discrepancies regarding Lutz's conduct and financial declarations. The other end of the line paused as he processed the gravity of the request. A colonel was asking a captain to sit in on a family meeting about his subordinate. It was an extraordinary request, simple domestic dispute. Then his voice came back, firm and resolute. I'll be there, Colonel. The next evening, I summoned them to my father's living room. I wanted them to feel the foundations of their own kingdom shake. I rearranged the space myself, pushing the cozy coffee table against the wall, and placing 4 hardback dining chairs in the center. Was no television on, no snacks laid out, and no pretense of hospitality. They trickled in uneasy, counting down the seconds to detonation. My mother, Margot, frowned and crossed her arms defensively. Why so serious? She inquired, her voice tense. Logan, ever the nonchalant, slouched into a chair. They arrived expecting a lecture, perhaps another emotional outburst they could dismiss. They had no idea they were walking into a briefing, a court-martial, and they were the targets. I let the tense silence stretch for a minute before speaking. I looked at each of them in turn. The total discrepancy is $87,450. My mother's jaw tightened. Logan didn't look up from his phone. I picked up the binder and opened it to the first tab. Item 1, I stated clearly. A $5,000 withdrawal from the... I looked at Logan Quinn. His thumbs froze over his phone screen. The color began to drain from his face. I turned the page with a crisp snap. Item 2. A series of 24 cash withdrawals totaling $20,000 made between June and October 2022. These funds were used for a trip to Miami, Panthers season tickets, and a penthouse apartment in Raleigh's North Hills district. For each charge, I slid the bank statement, vehicle registration, and social media post of Logan posing in front of his new car with the caption "Hard work pays off" out of the binder. Feet. The boredom mask broke, revealing frightened wrath. You're lying. You're just jealous. My mother's performance began on cue. Her eyes welled up with practiced tears, her lower lip trembling. Harper, how could you? How could you treat your own brother this way after everything we've done for you? Her words were cut short by the sharp, sudden chime of the doorbell. The sound hung in the air, an unexpected interruption to their script. Liam Hunter, in his immaculate Class A uniform, stood on the threshold, silhouetted against the evening light. The contrast between his crisp official presence and the casual disarray of my family was jarring. He nodded once, a gesture of formal respect to me, then stepped inside and stood at parade, authoritative statue. Logan froze mid-rant and stared at his commanding officer, his face turning a pasty, bloodless white. All the bluster, all the indignation died in his throat. He sank back into his chair as if his strings had been cut. Captain Thorne had turned the living room into a courtroom. Razor. Final item, I said, focusing on my mother's tears, which had miraculously dried up. $2,000 transferred to my Aunt Linda for cataract surgery. My father flinched as if struck. This money never arrived. Instead, Aunt Linda was informed by you, Mother, that I was having financial trouble. Logan, in a stunning act of generosity, loaned her $500 of my own money. I closed the binder with a soft thud and turned to face the unformed officer in the corner. Captain Thorne, I said, my voice clear and formal, would defrauding a relative, especially an elderly one, and leveraging a fictitious business funded by illicitly obtained money violate Article 134 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice actions that would raise serious ethical and professional concerns? Captain Thorne didn't need to answer my question about the UCMJ because his code was absolute and its judgment was clear. The silence that followed was the sound of a dynasty crumbling. Logan, the golden boy, collapsed into H. My father, Walter, seemed to age a decade in 10 seconds. He stared at the floorboards as if they held the secrets of the universe, his face a mask of profound, hollowed-out shame. He was witnessing the consequences of a lifetime of passive complicity, ineffective against my fortress of facts. The faucet turned off instantly, the sad matriarch's mask peeled away, and behind it was something hard, cold, and venomous. Her eyes narrowed into slits of pure, undiluted fury. You humiliate your family in front of a stranger after all we've done for you and all the sacrifices we made, she said, her voice a low, menacing whisper. I didn't answer, watched her. Her reaction was the final piece of evidence I needed. She was furious at being caught, not sorry for the crime, only for the verdict. I felt exhausted, the adrenaline from the confrontation finally receding, leaving a deep, aching weariness. I reached down and picked up the black binder from the floor, closing it softly, carefully placed stone in the new wall I was building between us. First, my lawyer will draft a promissory note for the full $87,450 and send it here tomorrow. You both will sign it. I looked from my mother's furious face to my father's defeated one. Second, you will call Aunt Linda and apologize. I surveyed the wreckage of my family. This is not a negotiation. These are the terms. My mother opened her mouth to spit more venom, but I held up a single hand. I took a breath and prepared to kill the relationship that had defined and damaged me for so long. From this point forward, our relationship is bound by accountability, not family ties. I thought of the researcher Nee Brown, whose work had helped me understand the geography of my own pain. Clear as kind, unclear eye, kindest thing I could do for myself. It was radical self-preservation. My father finally looked up at me, and I saw a universe of pain and a dawning tragic acceptance. He understood, too late, but he understood. He gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. I turned and walked toward the front door. Captain Thorne had discreetly let himself out during the fallout, leaving us to our own destruction. As I opened the front door, I heard my father's choked sob, pure grief. A small traitorous part of me wanted to turn around to comfort him, but I didn't. I stepped out into the cool, damp Fayetteville night air. And when the front door clicked shut behind me, it wasn't an ending. It was a beginning, just been one. 6 months passed. My only contact with my family was a sterile automated email notification, once a month confirming that my parents' account payment had been transferred as per the legal agreement. It was the cold, quiet hum of justice being served. I heard through a brief professional correspondence with Captain Thorne that Logan had been officially reprimanded. His once promising career path was now a dead end. My mother never called, and my father never wrote. The house in Fayetteville, where I grew up, was no longer a home, but merely an address on a legal document. The silence between us was no longer the suffocating weight of unspoken truths. It was the clean, crisp air of a respected boundary. I didn't call ahead, so Aunt Linda's surprise quickly turned into a joyful hug when she opened the door. Her eyes, now clear and bright after a successful surgery paid for by her sister's apology check, sparkled. I didn't tell her the whole story. There was no need to tarnish her with the details of their betrayal. I simply said there had been a misunderstanding, and that I wanted to make sure she was well taken care of. I gave her $5,000 to take a trip, fix up the garden, or do whatever she wanted. No strings attached. When she hugged me, tears of gratitude in her bright eyes, I felt like I was repaying a debt to my own kindness, which had been so cruelly weaponized against me. I was Harper at a local outreach center for homeless veterans. I never wore my uniform or used my rank. I helped men and women whose shoulders were stooped with the weight of forgotten wars and a society that had cast them aside to write resumes. I guided them through VA benefits. Most importantly, I listened, from being made to feel invisible. After their service was no longer needed in helping them rebuild their lives, I was healing myself. I realized the skills the Army had taught me, strategy, logistics, and analysis, could be used to rebuild my life as well. Sat and watched the sun slowly rise over the Atlantic Ocean, painting the sky in orange, pink, and gold. The black binder, my arsenal of truth, still sat in a locked file cabinet in my apartment, but its weight was gone. It was no longer an instrument of war, but a historical document, a reminder of a battle I had won. I was no longer a rejected daughter. I was Colonel Harper Quinn, a soldier, a survivor, and finally a free woman. My life was just beginning. My story has found its peace. But I know that for many of you listening, your own battles may still be ongoing. You are not invisible. Your strength, sacrifices, and worth are real. Even if your loved ones don't see it, you were forged from starlight. If my story resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story matters. And subscribe for more stories of resilience and finding your voice.